Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Paul Heath and I'm the chairman of this committee. I will now go through a few items of housekeeping before we proceed with the main business of the meeting. We are not expecting a fire alarm this evening, but should one sound, please can members use the exit to the rear of the chamber and assemble in the car park. Please could you also make sure that your phones and devices are switched to silence, and if members wish to speak during our debates this evening, please can you indicate by raising your hand and I will come to you at the appropriate time. Please could I remind everyone to use their microphones when speaking and to switch them off when they are finished speaking, including myself. And can I also remind you that this meeting is being webcasted. I will now proceed with the main business of the meeting. Item number 1, apologies for absence. As you can see, we have a few. They are Councillors Wendy Taylor, Justin Wrench, Ron Ramage, George Courtauld, Jim Bond,
and Councillor Abbott.
And Councillor James Abbott, that's it. Are there any further apologies?
No further apologies, thank you, Chairman.
Okay. If there are no further, which there isn't, I will proceed with item number 2, which is the declaration of interest. Do members have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest, or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening? If so, please state the item and the nature of your interest. No, thank you. So then we move to item number 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Please could I have a proposal to move the minutes as an accurate record of the meeting of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee held on the 3rd of April 2024. Thank you. And we have a second of thank you. All those in favour, please. Thank you. Jessica. Right, item number 4 is public question time. There are no registered speakers for this evening's meeting, so we'll proceed with item number 5, which is the annual report of the Community Safety Partnership of 23-24. Members, the annual report to Community Partnership is set out on pages 5 to 21 of our agenda. With us this evening we have Tracy Parry, Community Services Manager at the Council, and Councillor Mary Cunningham in her capacity as Cabinet Member for Stronger Communities. Welcome to you both. And Tracy, would you like to present your report to the committee, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So the purpose of this report is to provide you with an overview of the work of the Braintree District Community Safety Partnership during the year 23-24. Community safety partnerships are made up of representation from Braintree District Council, Essex Police, the Fire Service, Probation, Mid and South Essex Integrated Care Service, Essex County Council and Eastlight Community Homes. They're a statutory partnership and as part of that partnership we have a statutory requirement to carry out on an annual basis a strategic assessment. So this is an assessment that looks at all forms of data and analyses that data. So it could be police data, it could be data from domestic abuse charities, it could be data from drug and alcohol services, and all that data is analysed as well as looking at anecdotal information to look at what the priorities should be for a community safety partnership for the following year. The partnership is about adding value, so it's not about individual organisations. So Essex Police will still continue to what they do on a day-to-day basis, as will the other statutory partners. So for 23-24, the CSP priorities were protect the vulnerable, promote healthy relationships, keep safe online, build community resilience and promote safety in our communities. The partnership has a governance structure within it, so we have a responsible authority group This is the group that provides the strategic overview and obviously challenges partners in relation to what is on the action plan. We also have a community safety hub, and that is the operational arm of the Community Safety Partnership. It has about 40 different members on it, so some of the statutory partners, but a lot of community and voluntary sector partners, housing associations, family solutions, social care and the like. And those are the partners that are on the ground on a day-to-day basis, dealing with individuals, with families, and with what we would class as hotspot areas across the district where certain activities may be taking place. We also have a domestic abuse subgroup. Unfortunately, domestic abuse cases are still quite high, not just across this district, but across the county, and it was felt that there needed to be a separate group to discuss victims and families of victims and how we could support them and manage their level of risk. We also have a homeless prevention group, and this really is about how we can try and keep people in their homes that may be causing antisocial behaviour, may be struggling to pay their bills, but rather than make them homeless, how as a partnership we can actually support them to stay within their tenancy. We also have a local exploitation group, and this focuses on mainly child exploitation, whether that's from a sexual exploitation point of view or a criminal exploitation point of view. And we look at not cases as such, because that is dealt with via social care, but really about that early intervention piece and preventing young people from being exploited, but also areas across the district where young people may be targeted. And then from a county-wide point of view, we sit on the county-wide CSP, which is called Safer Essex, but we also have representation on specific groups, the multi-agency approach to fraud group, the ASB strategic group, Prevent, which is around one of the arms of counter-terrorism, the Violence Against Women and Girls group, and the Mid-Essex Missing and Child Exploited group. They're all quite wordy titles. So from the point of view of achievements, I think last time I came there were some comments around figures, so we've tried to include as many figures from partners as we can. So I'll just touch on some of those achievements. So in relation to antisocial behaviour, we have been working with Essex Police and a number of other partner agencies around targeting ASB. And you'll see from the report that across the Braintree district this included 253 high visibility patrols, 9 patrols with partners and counsellors, 600 vehicle speed checks, 51 test purchases at local businesses, 17 licensing checks, 29 community engagement events, 13 stop and searches, 24 vehicle stops and 9 public meetings. The fire service, from an education and support point of view, have carried out safe and well visits, and this is to vulnerable and elderly members of the community, and they offer personal safety advice, sometimes fitting fire alarms and smoke detectors, but also to sign residents to appropriate services. Across the year, they carried out 135 safeguarding referrals, so that they really are out and about in the community where they're most needed. They also have an education team, and they delivered 144 educational inputs into schools across the district, reaching 7,814 pupils. And they deliver various themes. It depends really what the school asks for, but it can be things around cyber safety, it can be things around firework and Halloween time, healthy relationships, hate crime, road traffic and pedestrian safety. We also last year carried out for the first time in quite a number of years Crucial Crew. Crucial Crew is a primary school age event, and we held it at iConstruct, and it's basically for Year 6 students. So we had 289 Year 6 students from schools both urban and rural, and they came along and they were they took part in workshops, and those workshops were led by Essex Police, the Children's Society, the Council and the Highways. And it's just really about being able to put messages out to children and young people as early as possible. And it was around online safety, healthy relationships and road safety. And really for us to have the opportunity to engage with children about their perception of safety, what is safe, what isn't. And I'm pleased to say we're holding that again this year. Fraud and cybercrime is one of our biggest crime types in the district, often hidden and often underreported. But Essex Police's Fraud Prevention Coordinator has supported more than 585 victims of fraud across the district, and that's offering advice, safeguarding and helping with the recovery of money from scams. We've also supported that coordinator with community events and delivering fraud prevention talks at sheltered housing complex, village halls, coffee mornings, wherever somebody wants her to go and us, we will go. And then safer streets. So we were fortunate enough to receive just short of £300,000 for safer streets in Whittam, with match funding of £150,000. Safer streets, you target a specific area, so it's not the whole of the town. So you focus on a lower super output area. And the funding is specifically around neighbourhood crime, antisocial behaviour and reducing violence against women and girls. So we formed a partnership group. So that was made up of Braintree District Council, Whittam Town Council, the police, CARA, which is a sexual abuse charity, Crime Stoppers, Neighbourhood Watch, Fusion. And I've just set out there some of the achievements. So we were fortunate enough to be able to give some funding to Whittam Town Council to install 11 new CCTV cameras in designated areas which are managed and monitored by the Town Council. Also, the Town Council were able to employ a street warden, so that visibility within the town centre and surrounding areas. And that street warden not only carried out patrols by himself, but also alongside our street scene enforcement team and Essex Police, and continues to do so. We had some community safety impact nights, and this is where we went out with partners and spoke to local businesses and individuals, lots of conversations in pubs and providing anti-spiking merchandise. And also 2 of the pubs were provided with bleed kits from the Liam Taylor Foundation. Fusion delivered a sports outreach programme for young people. 1,500 attended with 500 unique visitors. And CARA, the Centre for Action on Rape and Abuse, delivered a total of 713 one-to-one specialist sexual violence therapy sessions for 60 women and girls from Whittam. We also carried out 65 dedicated ASB patrols. There were 8 deployments of the knife arch. We did property marking events. We had a dog watch event. So overall, a really, really successful programme. And I know some of those interventions continue with other funding and through Whittam Town Council. We then got another round of funding for our Halstead. So we secured just short of £200,000. And again, similar partners, the Town Council, police, etc. But we've also got Essex Youth Service on board. And that was really because we were finding that there was some exploitation issues in Halstead and young people not being in school. So we're sort of halfway through our Safer Streets with Halstead at the moment. But so Halstead Town Council have also used some of the funding for CCTV and a street warden. But Essex Youth Service have delivered a 12-week alternative education programme, which is just finished, and we're waiting for the outcome of that. But it enabled those young people that weren't in school to actually have some education, gain some qualifications. I mean, they've done food hygiene and they've done first aid. So there's some of the highlights. The funding that we get as a CSP, we get an annual fund from the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner of £17,739, and then the Safer Streets money was something that the partnership bid for separately. So this report is for you as a committee to review and to make any recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Tracy. Councillor Parker, please.
Yes, just on the fraud, I noticed that a lot of the events have been related to older people, but actually my experience of the people, the other end of the age group also gets targeted by fraud, and I was wondering whether any events have been proposed for year 13s after they leave school, because I think at that particular age they're quite vulnerable when they start to get bank accounts. They haven't experienced these scams with texts and so on, probably panic a bit about having money stolen, and I do think they do get targeted by scammers. So I was wondering whether that could be considered as something that's brought forward next year.
Yeah, thank you. It's something I can take back and talk to the fraud coordinator about, definitely.
Councillor Beavis, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and brilliant, Tracy, as always. It's just amazing, actually, what you do with the money that you have. But, you know, it's just so much going on, and it's just a shame that we can't amplify that to residents when they complain about nothing is being done. In terms of the 17,700 from the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, I guess my first question is it enough? And how can we bid to the Commissioner for more? How does that work, sort of pro rata across Essex? Is my first question. My second question is, I was reading today in one of our emails from officers with some delegated authority around the Safer Streets funding this afternoon, I think, and certainly something for Whittam and Housestead, I seem to recall reading. Where's sort of next? And the reason I say that is because we've got some pretty big villages, and I'm not just saying that because I happen to live in one, but over the last couple of weeks, we've had some issues starting to crop up in both of the Headinghams, and some serious vandalism actually in both the play areas in Castle and Sybil Headingham. And I know years ago we were the first village ever to have a dispersal order. We're certainly nowhere in that, you know, but I just sense that it just feels as if something might be brewing again. And I just wondered how we sort of, you know, actually what we've done after Parish Council meeting on Monday night is to email the police and say that it'd be quite useful, I think, for us to have a check-in with them. So how does that sort of feed back into the bigger picture of the work that you do?
Okay, so if I start with the first one about the funding. So the funding that we get from the PFCC, their office has a formula. Don't ask me to quote what that formula is, but there is a formula as to how we get that funding. I think the PFCC has been very successful in getting other funding streams out of different departments at central government, and we do have the opportunity to bid for that funding. So, for example, because of the ongoing issues we're having at the moment in Braintree Town Centre, we have had some funding from, so when the new ASB action plan came out in March 2023, Essex Police and Essex were given a pot of money by government to target ASB. In year one, Braintree, nowhere in the Braintree district was in the top 10%. This year we are. So the money that comes into the PFCC, obviously they're looking at crime figures and crime data, and when you compare us to other local authorities, we sit quite low in relation to crime. But I think there is also, and you can imagine, Councillor Beavis, I do bang on that even though we haven't necessarily got high crime levels, we have got pockets of crime that we need some funding for. So we can make the case, and we do, and Councillor Cunningham does through the Police, Fire and Crime panel, for extra funding, but it comes from different sources. So all we can do is just keep asking. So we've got some money to do some violence against women and girls as well. So it's just, there's different funding pots, but I've been in a few meetings recently where we're talking about sort of longer term funding and bigger funding pots. So it's something I always keep on about. So that's the funding one. In relation to Safer Streets, so there's sort of two strands to Safer Streets. So one is a pot that was held by the Home Office, and one is a pot that was held by the PFCC's office. Obviously, there's been no announcement as to whether or not there will be any future Safer Streets money from central government. There is still a small pot that the PFCC holds, which we can bid to. Obviously, that again is for the whole of the county, and there are some local authority areas that haven't accessed any of it at all. So I think you're doing the right thing in heading them. If you've got issues, then obviously the more you can report in, because all of these things need to be evidence-based. So I think the calls in, or even keeping diary sheets about things, and then you can build up that evidence picture.
Yeah, thank you. Could I ask a further question? Thank you. Whilst I've got Tracy here, I'm a Suffolk girl, so born and bred, and I live in the Hedinghams, but go to Sudbury a lot because it's kind of right on my doorstep. But I do go to Braintree town centre quite a bit, and I suppose I have front of eyes because my young niece works right in the centre of town. And I was there over the weekend, and you know, when you go to Freeport, you might as well be somewhere else. You cannot compare. It's apples and pears. Freeport's fab. It's got a really nice vibe. It feels safe and everything else. But Braintree Town Centre now is just a huge open space in the centre of the town. It's like a big square with nothing in it. It just feels desolate and desperate. And I haven't got any of the answers. I'm not the member. But as a member of the district council, and I know we're out to consultation, I will be feeding into it, because I really am getting quite concerned about Braintree Town Centre. I wouldn't go there at night. It's just an observation. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Some really great stuff there. And as Councillor Beaver said, amazing the stuff that you're able to do with a limited amount of money. So that's all good. I've got a few questions, I'm afraid, just on some of the specifics. There's a section on safeguarding young people on public transport. Is there a focus there on county lines, or is that something that's treated separately?
So that is around, county, so exploitation, so whether that's county lines or just general exploitation of children. So it's led by Essex Children's Safeguarding Board, and because we know that a lot of the children that go missing or are exploited are using the train lines, because it's quite easy to get into London or down to the coast. So yes, it focuses on both child sexual exploitation and criminal exploitation, including the gangs.
Right, of course, because of course somewhere, you know, the train station in Whittam is in my ward. Whittam is a prime opportunity for people who want to perpetrate county lines, and to, you know, some people not too far away from London, and then suddenly be in a reasonably sized town where, frankly, they could do business. So that's good to hear. In terms of the safer streets for Whittam, just a couple of specific questions. The CCTV, I think I may have asked you this before. Apologies if so. Is that temporary, or is that staying around?
It's permanent.
It's permanent. Mm-hmm. Great, excellent. And the cameras themselves, they're in fixed positions, so they're not mobile. They will be in fixed positions.
So they're fixed, but some of them can move. So they're not just on one point, so they can be moved to cover various different angles. But yeah, they're fixed.
Right, okay, great. Thank you very much. That's great. And then just in terms of the funding, I suppose I was reading the report and just thinking what happens next, because there's all these amazing initiatives. Will it be the case that when the funding runs out, they stop? And if so, when is that? And is there any plans to try and renew the funding in some way, shape or form?
Do you mean for safer streets?
Specifically, but also more generally.
Okay, so the allocation we get for the CSP from the PFCC is an annual allocation, so we get that every year.
Yeah.
Safer streets is something you bid for. So so once the funding is spent, there is no more funding from safer streets. But for example, with the town councils, obviously they've taken on those CCTV cameras and will continue to monitor them. We've been working with Fusion about seeking other funding to be able to continue those diversionary activities. So what we try and do is work with those partners to seek other funding alternatives.
Yeah.
Because once that pot is run out,
Exactly.
then but you know, so for example with Cara, they you know, there's county-wide commissioning, so potentially they will be commissioned by the county. But whatever partners we work with, before we get to the end, we try and think of other sources to make things sustainable as best we can.
So as things stand, when would, just taking safer streets, when would that pot run out? When would that be due to?
So Whittam has finished.
Yeah.
Housestead is due to finish at the May 2025.
And so in both of those cases, there's work to try and sustain the funding.
Yeah.
Great. And then overall, I thought there was quite a big focus on inputs rather than outputs, and some of the statistics you gave were very, very useful there. But I suppose I was left wondering, what has this achieved in terms of cutting crime, basically, or you know, reducing antisocial behaviour and keeping people safer? Are there some sort of main KPIs around sort of this broader project and the broader partnership, and are they being analysed and evaluated and monitored, and will we be able to see sort of what the results were in terms of crime being cut, for example?
So I think it's very difficult.
I get that.
Because, so for example, if I use domestic abuse as an example, so even though community safety partnerships and the county board of domestic abuse have spent an awful lot of money, and there's been a lot of resources going to prevention, education, supporting victims, supporting families and supporting perpetrators, our domestic abuse figures across the county are still going up. So it's also the intervention that you put in, you might not actually see any results till 3, 4, 5 years down the line. And so if we do some inputs with children and young people in year 5, to be able to track whether or not they then go and commit a crime in 5, 6 years' time, again, is very, very difficult. So I'd love to say that we've got a formula for being able to say we have achieved this, but I think personally it's really hard, but it's something that is constantly being looked at across the county.
No, I understand that. It's, you know, correlation isn't causation, and there's all sorts of factors that could affect crime rates. I do understand that. I suppose my concern is just ensuring that we're spending money in an efficient and effective way, and we're not using this very limited funding on something that actually turns out not to be particularly effective. But I take your point that it's very, very hard to measure. And then finally, big focus on safety and well-being for young people, including through Crucial Crew, I think it's called. I was just wondering, and this is something I have to declare an interest for, not literally, I would have done that at the beginning, but is there any scope, or is it happening already, to offer help and support or guidance or raise awareness of not just sort of abusive relationships, but also the effect and impact of parents who have substance abuse problems, so alcoholics and drug users, because I think quite often the children of those parents get lost in this conversation. And I was just wondering, you know, in those sessions, is that something that could be incorporated? Is it something that's brought in already? You know, signposting young people to help, raising awareness of sort of what a parent who drinks too much or, you know, takes drugs looks like, and the telltale signs and all the rest of it. Is that something that can be brought into the conversation, or is that outside of the remit?
So I would say there are specialist organisations that deal with that. Things are, so we will do things around healthy relationships and what a healthy relationship should look like. And that's not just necessarily peer relationships, but family relationships. But organisations such as the Children's Society, who I mentioned, and also through social care and family solutions, that's where those type of things are picked up more, because they're quite specialist and quite niche. So those services are there. But I wouldn't say it's something we talk to about young people about, you know, this is what a alcoholic parent looks like, or because we have to be quite careful what we can deliver in schools. Everything has to be sense checked by the schools before we even go in and deliver anything, or any organisation goes in and deliver. But there are, so it's a little bit like the domestic abuse. There are children's services linked to domestic abuse, and it's the same with. So if there's a referral going to social care for a child and there's drug and alcohol abuse, all that work takes place through social care and family solutions.
Okay.
So not necessarily through us, because it's quite specialist.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I come in here, Chairman? Yes. Sorry. Just to enlarge a little bit on what Tracy has said, I attended the Critical Crew, I never get that right, Crucial Crew, a morning of their sessions last year, and actually I was very impressed. As Tracy said, the Children's Society attended, and they set up a workshop along with our own community service children's officer, and they put questions to children, and they knew the background of the school that was, this particular school that was attending. And they put questions to children which actually identified issues that those children were having, and the notes were taken, and the relevant services were then going to be there was a teacher there as well, so that was fed through to the teacher, because they won't talk to the parents, maybe they may not tell the teacher, but somebody outside of that environment asking the right questions gained some really good information there, that actually the point you made can actually help those children.
Right. Thank you both for your input this evening. So can we accept the report and recommendation then, please, members? All those in favour? Thank you. Thank you very much. And a fantastic job you do, Tracy, you know that. Oh, I hope you know that. and it is very much appreciated. Turn it back on, yep. Agenda item number 6 then, please, and that is the full quarter performance report for 23-24. Members, the report for this item is set out on pages 22 to 59 of the agenda and will be presented by Tom Williams, Corporate Performance Coordinator. Tom, please can I invite you to present your report?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This report sets out the Council's progress towards our corporate priorities as at the end of the fourth quarter and the full financial year, April 1st, 23 to 31st of March, 24. This report was presented to Cabinet on the 1st of July, and I will present to you the briefing that was provided to Cabinet by Councillor Bowers. As at the end of the year, 21 projects are marked as completed, 30 are on track and progressing well into the next year, and 6 projects have an amber status. By exception, I will detail the amber status projects as follows. Replacement studio and sports hall floors at the Braintree Sport and Health Club. Costing estimates continue to be over budget. The Council needs to reassess whether the original budget agreed is sufficient to complete the works to the full scope of the project. The A12 widening scheme, a legal challenge has been made to the Secretary of State, challenging the decision to grant the development consent order. The future of this project is currently unclear, and it will remain unclear until the legal challenge has been resolved to the development consent order. The community centre in Witham, the budgetary requirements for the project will not be clear until the construction tender has been completed. Improvements to the recreation ground at Ramsey Road and Housestead, there are requirements to conduct a sewer survey, and this will need to be considered within the delivery timeline for the project. And finally, the Witham Enterprise units, whilst the current design proposal has been given pre-application planning approval, the financial viability of the project is still under consideration. Moving on to performance indicators, 9 performance indicators have achieved or exceeded their target at the end of the year. 2 performance indicators missed target by less than 5%, which were the collection rates for council tax and business rates respectively, and 3 performance indicators have missed their target by more than 5%. These were the cumulative number of homes granted planning permission due to some major applications which were anticipated in the financial year presented after the end of the financial year. Recycling rates had also missed the target by more than 5%, in addition to the percentage of inquiries resolved at the first point of contact in our customer services centre. Further comments relating to the performance indicator outturn can be found within the report as well. The Council has made a number of key achievements in delivering this year's annual plan. To list some of those, the Housestead Public Gardens have been successfully refurbished. Councillor community grants were awarded to the value of £33,154. Health and wellbeing services are now being offered at full capacity at Victoria Square. 3 separate marketing campaigns were successfully delivered, focusing on litter reduction, minimising food waste and climate change awareness. As Tracy mentioned earlier, the Safer Streets programme was successfully delivered in Whittam. An apprentice fair was hosted for 1,500 Year 10 students from across the district. The garden waste subscription service launched with over 35,000 households subscribing to the service. Customer experience was enhanced through the launch of the My Account system earlier in the year. 424 affordable homes were delivered. Our leisure centres saw a total of 769,000 visitors. 459 businesses were provided with non-financial support. 205 cases of homelessness were prevented, and 317 residents received support from our handyman scheme. In addition to that, the Council also saw a reduction in complaints compared to the previous year. Only 2 complaints progressed to stage 2, and there were no stage 3 or ombudsman complaints investigated throughout the year. Staff members across the year recorded a total of 3,279 hours of learning, and the organisational headcount ended at 501. Moving on to the financial summary, the finance section of the report sets out the budgetary outturn for 2023-24, information on capital spending and resources for the year, details of treasury management activity, and the movement on general fund unallocated balances. The report shows that there was an overall positive variance of £1.1 million on the general fund revenue account for the year after approved budget carry-forwards. The main reason for the variance was overachieved income, particularly from treasury management, where the rapid rise in interest rates provided windfall gains on short-term investments. While staffing budgets were underspent, there were additional service costs incurred, including that in relation to the Wethersfield Asylum Centre legal challenges. On the 15th of May 2024, the Cabinet Member for Finance, Resources and Performance approved requests for the carry forward of unspent budgets and the addition to earmarked reserves, which have been reflected in the outturn position. There is a net increase in the general fund unallocated balances of £459,000, resulting in a closing balance on the 31st of March 2024 of £8.5 million. Details of the main variances are set out in the finance section of the report. Capital spending for the year totaled £5.1 million against a profiled budget of £7.8 million. Expenditure included £1.6 million on housing improvement and disabled facilities grants, with the balance of spend incurred across a mixture of community projects, planned property maintenance, investment into IT infrastructure and systems, and operational vehicles and equipment. Capital budgets totalling £2.7 million have been carried over into 24-25 as the respective projects remain to be completed. And the financial performance will be subject to an audit by KPMG LLP as part of the external audit work on the final accounts for the year. This report represents the performance of the final year in the 2020 to 2024 corporate strategy, and the next report will review the performance of the 24-25 annual plan against the new corporate priorities, which are community, prosperity and environment. And finally, following Councillor Bauer's presentation at Cabinet, Councillor Spray provided some further detail alongside the comments already within the report regarding the missed target of delivery of new homes within the district. She outlined the cautiousness of developers and increased mortgage rates being a contributory factor to this. And Councillor Bowers-Flint spoke about Braintree District Council producing the highest number of affordable houses in comparison to other local authorities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Questions, please, members? Councillor Beavis, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Do you want me to kick off? And in no particular order, and I was at Cabinet and took the report from Councillor Bowers, and I actually did sort of suggest to Councillor Bowers that it would probably be quite helpful if he actually came to corporate scrutiny once in a while and gave us a sort of similar sort of report as well. I think it would be quite helpful. And I also appreciate that the report is looking back and that now we have consulted on the Council's new corporate strategy, and from that the annual plan comes and priorities and everything. I get all of that. I just wonder how going forward this committee could be more proactively engaged in the process of the corporate strategy and planning of the council. And I say that, you know, just thinking about the £1 million of new homes bonus which was mentioned and the money that it was spent on, the levelling up funding, councillors' grants, it goes on. There are so many projects. And I just think, I was working with a local authority in Essex just a month or so ago now, and they were talking about how they're going to engage their members in the process of the corporate plan, because the corporate plan was the number one priority cross-party for members. And I actually came away that night thinking, I don't really feel we're in that space, and that I actually felt, wow, that was quite a good session with this council. And I'm not really sure we're doing that here. So I haven't got all the answers, but I just feel that as a committee, through you, Chair, that, you know, maybe once every meeting we could say, okay, at this meeting, let's do a bit of a deep dive on this issue. We get the reports back, but I'm not 100% sure that we fully get into the detail of what we're actually trying to understand. And I have spoken to Councillor Bowers about this. I mean, he sort of knows my view on this. So I could pick on many different other items, actually, but I would come back with the same conclusions, that I just feel that the corporate strategy is the most important document outside of the council's local plan, which in any case feeds into the corporate strategy. And I would like to be engaged a bit more in that process, sitting as a member of the corporate scrutiny panel. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beavis. We will obviously take your comments on board. Obviously, when we do develop the corporate strategy, there is quite a lot of opportunity for members to get involved in that process. So, as you recall, for the last corporate strategy development, we did bring it to Corporate Scrutiny Committee. There was also a member development evening as well, and obviously there's also opportunity through the consultation for the corporate strategy as well. So, but yes, obviously we'll take your comments on board and we can have a look at increasing that for the next corporate strategy.
Yeah, can I just make one further comment? Ultimately, the point I'm kind of making is, I think it would be really nice if the committee could get more involved in future ongoing projects rather than looking back. Because it's a bit like the Headingham Medical Centre, you know, clearly I read a lot about it. It's been featured in the programme for some time. But it's ongoing. I'm a ward member. I know a lot about it. But there's an awful lot of stuff in here that I don't know so much about. And I think if we probably went round the room, actually there's probably many other members that wouldn't know very much about many of these projects. And I just think it would be nice to get involved a bit more in what's going on currently, rather than sort of looking back and then it's already happened. Thank you.
So obviously the role of the Scrutiny Committee is to scrutinise the performance of the Council as a whole through the performance reports. Information in respect of individual projects, obviously we can't bring all of that to this committee because that would just be impossible to have all of these officers in the room to provide that. You do have opportunities to raise any questions around any of the projects that are within that within the report through either the members' inquiries inbox, through the raising a written member question through the governance team, and obviously through the any of the cabinet members through full council, and also obviously this report is published for cabinet. So if you do have any questions in relation to those projects, you can obviously raise that with a cabinet member at the time, and it can get raised at cabinet as well. So there's plenty of opportunities to raise questions about specific projects if you want some more information around those. But the performance report will always be a look back. Obviously those projects are designed and they're brought together through the services in conjunction with their portfolio holders. So, and that goes into the business planning process. So that's the process it goes into, and then we will take those projects to develop them into the corporate strategy. So we don't necessarily have that much of an involvement. That will have to go through the portfolio holders rather than sort of like through this committee, I would imagine, because that is where the decisions are made around what projects actually come into the strategy and into business plans.
Can I ask one further question, therefore? What actually do you want from us as a committee, not as an individual? I've sat here long enough to know as an individual what I need to do if I want to find stuff out. I get that. But we're a committee, a scrutiny committee, and I'm not 100% getting what you want from us as a committee. Thank you, Chairman.
So I can hopefully answer some of that. So as a scrutiny committee, your role is to look back at the performance of the council. So there are a number of indicators within this report around the overall performance on particular aspects. So part of your role is to get under that and as a wholesale picture to scrutinise whether that's an accurate picture, whether you agree with what's being reported, is that a good representation of the council's performance over the last year or over the last quarter, depending on what you're looking at. Scrutiny is always reflective, unfortunately, just by the very nature of it. And we can look at strengthening some of that. Obviously, members of this committee and other committees have gone through some training around scrutiny to try and help build your understanding and knowledge of scrutiny and how to make the most of it, how to ask the right questions, and if that's something that you feel as a membership for this committee, we can explore whether there's some additional training that we can go so that you can start building your knowledge around the committee and your role. But yes, certainly we're more than happy to support you around that.
Thank you, Kim. When I was sitting at Essex County Council, and clearly we had multiple scrutiny committees there, we actually went through a very similar process where scrutiny was actually sort of saying, is it really working? And we had the Centre of Public Scrutiny come to us. And in fact, a colleague of mine ran the session, and it was just brilliant. And it was at that moment we kind of realised as a committee that actually there was more that we could do. And I just wonder whether, through you, Chairman, maybe it is time that we maybe worked with the Centre to have a look at us as a committee and whether we do need a bit more support in the way that we scrutinise. It's just an observation. Thank you.
Yeah, myself and Jessica, along with you, do listen to everything that's said here, and sometimes even watch this back again, and we do take it forward, and yeah, I'm very keen to learn every day. I believe in continuous learning, and we will take what you said, and Jessica's got more notes than I have, and I've got some as well, and we will reply.
Yes, Chairman, I just would like to support Councillor Beavis there, actually, because although I've been on this council for a number of years, I still don't quite understand how the scrutiny committee is meant to work and precisely what we're meant to be doing and what we're not meant to be doing. So some additional support, I think. You know, obviously we've been a committee that's been in existence for over a year now. It's a bit unfortunate we still feel that we're in this position, I think, some of us. So I think some further training and help for us as to precisely what we're meant to be doing on this committee, I think, would be really helpful. Just on the report, could I just ask, if my Chairman, I personally have felt that the customer service centre isn't, the delays there are actually, frankly, in some cases unacceptable. And I notice that is now as a red, and not, you know, significantly not meeting our target. I didn't understand what the comment underneath it was, primarily due to the shifting of simple and straightforward calls to online channels. I don't understand what that means. Could you explain that, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to explain that because obviously I look after customer services as well. So what we mean by that is obviously we used to get quite a few sort of like quite simple inquiries in, sort of like I need to get a new bin, or I've had a missed bin. We do still receive those, but a lot of those more simple calls now, we've improved all of the website online facilities, so a lot of our calls are now going to our website rather than coming through to the customer service centre. So we have actually seen a drop in the number of waste inquiries that the customer service centre receive, an increase in the online applications around waste, right, second bins, garden waste, missed bins, etc. What we are seeing is an increase in calls around sort of like housing and planning, which can't necessarily be dealt with by the customer service advisor because they are in relation to their own individual cases that have a case officer applied to them within the housing or planning teams. The customer services team can deal with initial inquiries, sort of understanding and helping to sort of like triage to get them through to the right department if it's an initial inquiry. But if it's an ongoing inquiry, which we have had quite a lot of recently, sort of phoning back in where they've had calls from the, at their housing officer, so they're calling back in wanting to discuss their case in a lot more detail, or they're providing additional evidence around their applications. They can't be dealt with by the customer service team. So that's what we're saying. They're a little bit more complex in their nature than what the customer service team can deal with, so they're having to transfer them through to the service.
Okay, thank you. So I understand, I think I understand that, but what I'm still not understanding is why, if the calls are getting more complex and they just need to be referred by the customer service team to the relevant officer in, say, the housing department, the planning department or anything, why there are still lengthy delays of over 5 minutes and of sometimes of people answering the phone when they first ring up. It never used to be like that. I think that has crept in, and I don't quite understand. The answer you've given doesn't really explain why that is the case.
So the call answer time isn't actually in the report, but my understanding is we just report on the first point of contact.
Okay, sorry, I see percentage of calls resolved at first point of contact. So there's nothing in the report about how quickly you answer the phone.
I can let you know what the call answer time is if you wait a second.
Percentage answer within 30 seconds.
For the last year. No, that's not that one.
Oh, is it the other one? Sorry.
CHLP. No. That's the average. It's got up.
Oh, sorry. For the last year.
No, yeah, for the last year. So the average call answer time at the end of 23-24 was 55 seconds. The call answer time. So we do obviously have peaks and troughs throughout the day. Lunchtime is a very busy period, obviously because we are also covering the reception and we have people obviously going out on lunch. There are peak times we're also having to cover other services where they have team meetings, and that will increase the number of calls that are coming directly into the service. We do monitor it, we do monitor our peaks and troughs, and we do monitor sort of like the longest call waiting. And if there are any particular calls that you want us to look at, we are able to look at particular calls and the waiting times in respect of them as well.
Do we have a target for, is there a target for call times?
Yeah, the target for this year is 45 seconds.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to, Kim just told us part of our role is to look at how, is to assess whether what's in the report is accurate. And given that the vast majority of the data in there seems to be decontextualised, how are we supposed to drill down on the basis of what is presented in a fashion which would allow us to ascertain whether it was accurate or not? Thank you, Chairman.
So in terms of accurate, it's more around, does what the flavour of the report, is that an accurate reflection of the performance, so the perception of the performance, how you believe as a committee and how you believe as a ward member that the council is performing. So where we've got those indicators, and rightly questioned by Iona around some of the markers around customer service, Councillor Parker has some detail from her information that she questioned and challenged that data that was in there. Again, it's that challenge that comes through. To bring the background detail to all of this is quite difficult in terms of the context of a report. This gives you a summary. So in terms of accurate, yes, it's accurate. Is this a good reflection of what you understand the council's performance to be? Or are there elements of that that you think you've had complaints yourself or you're aware of issues that don't actually quite match what you're reading within the report? And that's where your challenge should come in. So I'm not asking or expecting you to say, well, that says 2.7% and I believe it's 2.5 because of the calculations in the background. It's more around, is this a true reflection of what you believe the council's performance to be?
So, with the Chair's permission, I'm trying to understand after a year, because I share some of the views of Councillors Beavis and Parker, I'm trying to understand what this corporate body's assessment of the meaning of the word scrutiny is. And the impression I've been given today is it's not to drill down to establish the accuracy of any part of the report, but more a case of developing an overall picture of whether generally the council is moving in the right direction and delivering broadly what it should be. So can I ask if I'm anywhere near understanding that?
So it depends on the report that's before you. If you are looking at call-in, obviously that's your action where you want to drill down into a particular decision that's been taken by the council and you have a degree, a different role to play as part of that. For these update reports, it is a little bit more broader. That doesn't mean that you aren't able to kind of get under the skin of some of it if you feel there is a particular issue that you're concerned about, and you can ask for that to come back with some information or some answers, some updates or around that, which is what we've had historically in terms of some of the queries and questions that the committee here and previous committee have raised. So your role does differentiate between the different types of reports that you've got and the role that you're particularly playing around whether it's a call-in scrutiny or whether it's a scrutiny of a performance report or a partnership review, etc.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm not seeing inside this report a tremendous number of decisions that we might want to call into question. That's going to be somewhere else. We might find that in cabinet papers, for example. Is that fair?
Yeah, so decision reports are taken either at cabinet or delegated decisions, and they're circulated to all members at the point they're signed and published.
Okay, so on that basis, would you agree that we're not scrutinising decisions here at all?
Not in this report, no.
No. Okay. Sorry, I'm not trying to be challenging. I'm just trying to make sure I understand what is expected of me because I insist on being given the best chance of doing my job here well. So it seems to me that we are therefore, we need help, frankly, and I would like to, I think part of what we're supposed to do is to potentially generate recommendations back to Cabinet for ways of improving things. And there are clearly two things that I can see from this evening that we might consider doing. These are now smart digital hyperlink, they could be hyperlinked documents, but they're not. So under each heading, it would be entirely possible to have in the background a link to a deep dive document, which would maybe itself contain hyperlinks, which would actually facilitate looking carefully at any given area. And another advantage of doing that is, my experience at my ripe old age is that the easier you make it for people to do the thing you want them to do, the more likely it is to happen. So I would recommend it on that basis. If that is what this corporate body wants of this committee, then facilitate it to the best of our abilities, because my expectation is the documents I'm asking for to be hyperlinked already exist. But this would just allow us to end up with a tree of information that we could mine into on whatever level we felt appropriate to do our job properly. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is that, with the greatest respect to Tom and to Tracy, what I heard in the presentation this evening was what didn't follow particularly closely the report. And bear in mind, we've got two documents saying fundamentally the same thing here. We've got the actual performance report, and then we've got the report to this committee, which quite reasonably follow one another. And yet Tom brought in and gave us figures that I struggled, because I was looking for them, to find in here. And reading figures like that has just it has two tendencies. One is people switch off, which runs counter to what we're trying to do here. But more importantly, it puts us in a position where we know lots and understand precious little. Because if we're going to serve any purpose, we have to understand what the data means in order to make smarter decisions in the future and determine policies for the future which take us to a better place. Surely that's our endeavour across the board here. And so it seems to me there are things we could do to make this better, rather than just training us in what it is the word scrutiny means in and of itself. We can add to that significant improvements in how enabling these reports are to us. And we can pull the officer report to this committee and the actual verbal presentation together, and probably leave out the fact that we spent £436.17 and 9 on a reverse feedback gazelle shaft. It's irrelevant to us doing our job. What's important is we understand the overall picture, which I think is what Kim was suggesting is what we're about here. Does that make sense?
Yep, I'm happy to take some of those away and look into it with Tracy and the team around what's feasible. I don't know the data that Tracy gets and how presentable that is and how that's then filtered into this type of report. In terms of the officer's presentation style, if you want the reports presented in a slightly different way, then we can take that away as well. Obviously, this is a hugely detailed report. There is a lot of information covering the whole range of the council services. So what we try to do in terms of our presentations is provide you with a summary. We take the fact that you've read the report, we take the fact that you've read the actual the performance report and the covering report as well. So we try to draw out, as part of that presentation, some of the key aspects that we want to draw your attention to the public's attention to. If you have a different style that you want us to explore, then we can more than happily accommodate that.
Can I just... Chairman, in everything I've said, there is absolutely no criticism of the way the report or the style in which it was presented. And I wouldn't want anybody to go away with that idea. My interest is purely in making sure that we facilitate as a council, to the best of our ability, the ability of this committee to deliver a proper and appropriate level of service. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Kim, as well. And I would agree with Councillor Holland, and using tonight's presentation as the example. I don't think, well, I'm certainly not trying to be difficult, but at the same time, I wouldn't want, and I don't think is the case for one moment, for officers to walk away and think, well, that's been through scrutiny, it's fine. It's not, and I don't think it is for one moment. It's supposed to just be a tick box exercise. And my experience of scrutiny over, many decades, if I may, has been quite different. But I just feel at this particular time that we've sort of lost our way, and the way that we are, I thought, supposed to be scrutinising this document is not quite what I'm having relayed to me. I thought I was there to scrutinise it, not to just look back and have a view on it. I think if there's something there, give an example, the refuse service, where I actually think, hang on a minute, I'm not happy with this, I should be doing something about it. That is good scrutiny, and I think it's to be celebrated, and I look for it in all local authority that I work with. The power of scrutiny is such an important thing. I think the way we do the budget process, again, you kind of, what scrutiny hat have I got on tonight? What am I doing? Am I scrutinising it? Am I reading it? What am I doing? Because it seems to me that when we're looking at the budget, we need a different sort of set of tools to this. And that's the bit I'm trying to get to. And so therefore, I think the training would be really, really helpful, because it would be a bit disappointing if we got to the stage of the budget and we wanted to look at something and somebody said, well, it's very detailed, it's very complex. You can't have that. That's not what this is about. And if one feels that we do need a bit more information, then we should jolly well be getting it. And finally, over the years, my experience of scrutiny has also been, I think once a year from Jessica, we get an invite to what would we like to look at in scrutiny this year. And we all put stuff forward, and I'm not quite sure how it's triaged. But historically, we would have external partners come to scrutiny. You know, we would have Greenfields, we would have the police, we're doing none of that. And actually, wherever I was last night planning, and I raised a point about the NHS, actually, I care. It matters. It really matters. And actually, it's in the new local government white paper. I'm sure listening to Councillor Butland today on Essex Live or whatever it was, and his view, not our view, but his view on partnership and all that sort of stuff. We should be doing a lot more of this. We should, as a committee, be saying, actually, what's going on with health? Let's have some representation. And in all of that, I just think that we should have a programme of works, and I don't think we have. Thank you.
I would just say, Councillor Beavis, the next item on the agenda will cover the committee's work programme coming up, so that is to be agreed. So that's why you haven't seen that yet, but I will be presenting that as the next item. Okay.
And that is that while we're councillors and work goes on during the year for our communities, if there are things that we're unhappy about, for example, the previous election, there were gaps, weren't there? Not necessarily the council's fault, but nevertheless there were things that some things went very well and some things didn't, polling stations and various other things. And there's been other things like, the bin collection. A lot of councillors were not happy about charging for the bins. So they are examples of things that have happened where we have gone in and scrutinised, like the bins. We scrutinised that decision, didn't we? And then, in the future, there's opportunities to put things on the list for the coming year so that we can go in and scrutinise those events that have happened or those services that have been provided that we feel maybe there were some gaps, what went wrong, how could we do it better in the future. That, to me, is what scrutiny is all about.
Yeah, can we just pick up, because that is the next item on our agenda.
Yeah.
So we do have this quarter performance. If we can finish this item, then we can move to the next. Councillor Parker, please.
Yes, on the key performance indicators connecting people and places, sorry, not that one, the enhancing our environment, percentage of household waste sent for reuse, recycling and composting, The reason why we didn't meet our target was something to do with the garden waste collection. I think it's quite I think it would be more helpful if we could break down that those figures to make a different per bin. So we have the garden waste bin, the food bin, and the recycling. Because I think what we're really interested in as a committee, really, and as probably as a council, is what our recycling rates are. And I think personally, I think it's unhelpful to include within that the garden waste. Because if we want to really try to tackle why our recycling rates are not as high as we would like them to be, we need to start off by some accurate figures as what those recycling rates are, and not mix in with them the garden waste. And then we can then start to look at why is it that our those recycling rates are not as high as they are. What can we do as a council to try and increase that? What steps can we take? So that would be a suggestion, Chairman.
Thank you for that. And just to add to that, I think Councillor Ramage asked a similar question last quarter. I provided some breakdown details of the particular reasons why we had missed that quarter's target. And recycling rates is quite a complicated one in the sense that it's a figure that is a result of about 7 other figures, all of which have their own trends and profiles. And particularly the biggest thing we could do to improve our recycling rate is to reduce our residual waste, which is a completely separate indicator. So I do appreciate where you're coming from. That one figure is a very vague and very sort of generalised answer to what is actually several different streams of refuse. The only thing I'm cautious of, and I know that we aren't going to make a decision on precisely the format of it, is that is a particular topic that could have significantly more detail included within the report, and we could have all of those figures within the report. And I'm just mindful that if we were to take a similar tack for various other elements of the report, we could end up with quite a large and further detailed report compared to what we have currently. That's all.
I'll just come back on that because without that detail, I mean, this figure's a bit meaningless, really, because, I mean, we can't contribute or can't sort of really comment on why that figure is. I think it's probably going slightly back to Councillor Holland's point. Unless we've got further information, we can't really make much of a comment on it other than to note it. So, which is probably, I just think we as a committee we could be, make some helpful suggestions.
No, that's perfect, and we will take that one away to look at. Thank you.
Jessica's made ample notes, and as I say, we will definitely follow up on what's been suggested. Can we accept the report then, please? Yep. Thank you. Thank you both for coming.
Thank you, Chair.
And your input. Right. Item number 7 is the draft work programme for 24-25. The report for this item is set out on pages 60 to 69 of our agenda, and could I invite Jessica Mann to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So, members, the report before you, it sets out the draft work programme of this committee for 2024-25, and also the terms of reference that we've identified in respect of the upcoming scrutiny review into the NEP Joint Committee Partnership Agreement. So, as part of the committee's recommendations for this evening, members will be asked to agree the draft work programme, which you can find at Appendix 1 to the agenda, and also the terms of reference, which is in Appendix 2, which is the scoping document for the NEP scrutiny review. So, just to give you some background, as part of the development of the Council's annual scrutiny work programme, there have been essentially 2 opportunities for topics to be submitted and subsequently assessed for potential scrutiny review by this council. So, as stated in the report, the first sort of tranche of topics that have been identified were endorsed by both Management Board and the Chairman of the Scrutiny Committees due to their timeliness, their likely impact on the organisation and the wider district. So as the NEP topic is of current significance to the organisation, it's felt that this should be taken as the first topic for this committee as the topic of a scrutiny review. So other topics listed within the report, there's Wethersfield, the North Essex councils. They're also agreed that these could be taken forward for scrutiny review, but as they're currently ongoing matters, it would be considered a bit premature to look at them at this stage. So we have included them in the work programme, but they will be taken forward at a later stage at a yet undetermined date. We will look to review those as part of a scrutiny review later on in the year. So to ensure that the views of the wider membership of this council were also captured, to taken on board some comments that were raised at the last meeting to ensure all members obviously had the opportunity to feed into the work programme. What we did was we initiated a formal call for topics process whereby all members were able to submit topics for potential inclusion in the annual scrutiny work programme. So that went out and everyone was given the opportunity to take part. But obviously just because a topic is submitted doesn't mean that it is guaranteed that it will be taken forward. Each topic submitted is assessed by jointly by Management Board and the Scrutiny Chairman in terms of its merits, timeliness and the likely resource implications to the authority, etc. So an update on those topic submissions will be provided to you all in due course. Those topics are currently being assessed, so I haven't got any further detail that I can give you to them at the moment. But as soon as we have more information, I will be I will be updating you all and obviously writing out to those members who each submitted topics to give you an update. And those topics that are taken forward from those suggestions that came from the call for topics will form what will be called kind of tranche 2 of the scrutiny work programme. So that will just come later in the year. So it's just a way of kind of just setting a definition between the two groups of topics. So members tonight are being asked to agree the committee's work programme, which is set out in Appendix 1. And I'd just like to reiterate that the work programme, even though you're being asked to agree it tonight, it is going to be a live document. So it's able to be amended throughout the year. Topic suggestions can come forward any time throughout the year. You don't have to wait for a formal call for topics process. But what we will do is we will obviously assess those topics, if they're sent into the governance inbox, for example, we will take those back and assess them, and then we will feed back to you and update you as to whether it will be appropriate to take those topics forward for the work programme. And then finally, in Appendix 2, just to explain to you, so this is a scoping document for the scrutiny review that we're intending to commence later this year into the NEP partnership agreement. And the scoping document just sets out the key lines of inquiry, which you should be able to find in Appendix 2. So members this evening are also being asked to agree the terms of reference as they are stated in that document. However, we're open to suggestions as to what other key lines of inquiry we might want to pursue as part of the scrutiny review. And we'll certainly, I'll keep a note of any suggestions that come forward, and we will look to add those in where we can. Chairman, that was just a brief summary, and happy for you to add anything else that you'd like. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, as Jessica says, this is now a live agenda that continues. Over the last couple of weeks, I've had members from both sides of the chambers contact me regarding the general election and how we went about it, which I've already started to feed into the governance team. And so it's not just what you see there is anything that comes up can come forward, and anything that's there by the sheer nature of us changing the government, changing the council's position or anything might fall off, such as Wethersfield. So has anybody any comment, please? Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Chairman. And in no particular order. So first of all, just on the sorry, I'm going back. So where we've got the NEP, the Joint Committee Partnership Agreement, is that where you're saying we're going to be doing a deep dive, and that's in this further document further down. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, Councillor Beavers, that is correct. So that is intended to be the first topic for scrutiny review of this committee. So it is essentially, as you say, a deep dive into that topic.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Second point is taking on point a comment by Councillor Jackie Martin. It's my understanding that since 2019, postal votes are up 20%, which is huge, actually. And the next election is on the 1st of May 2025, and we're nearly there. So we haven't got long. How do we do anything about that? You know, Chairman said that he's had some comments back. I know within probably most of the groups, we've all been thinking about that. How do we do something about that to escalate it and bring it to this committee? And yeah, I mean, I appreciate as well that, you know, there is a programme of works and, you know, things can be added at any time. One of the things that I'd like to understand more about, and I have brought this up at Cabinet, and I have had a promise, but it hasn't actually happened yet, is I'd like to understand a lot more about the NEC, the North Essex Councils Partnership. And at last Cabinet meeting before this one, in fact I brought it up twice now, I have said to the leader, we need to know more about what's going on here with this committee. And it hasn't been forthcoming. So again, is this something that we could have a look at, if we could add that to the list? And finally, on the, and I'm a great believer in this, on the power of call-in, how do we actually do that as a committee? So we're not happy, for example, with the way, it's not a council problem, it's a national issue actually, but I think we should be looking at it. How do we do that as a committee?
Okay, so I'll take those in sections. So just in relation to the election that's just happened, obviously the council is instructed to deliver the elections by government. It's not a council function, so therefore it wouldn't fall as part of a scrutiny issue that could come before this particular committee. However, I do want to provide some assurances around what you may or may not have heard on social media. The team do go through a debriefing. I've had a debrief with the team today. We go through a project meeting debriefing, which is taking place next week, and we will continue to work alongside the Electoral Commission, who we engage with throughout the process. So, as you rightly say, a lot of the problems were a national issue. They are very aware of it, and we are working with all partners around some of that. But it's not a scrutiny topic that could come forward for this particular committee. In terms of the NEC, obviously I can't speak for Cabinet in terms of any information that you've asked for through that particular forum, but I do know the NEC is one of the scrutiny topics in the pipeline to come forward at a future date at a convenient point, and Jess will correct me if I'm wrong around that. So it is in the programme, waiting to come forward as part of that. So you will have an opportunity to do a bit more of a deep dive, but if there's more information that you're seeking, I'll make sure through the Cabinet route that information comes forward, and I'll chase that up for you. I'll take that away. In terms of call-in, you can call in decisions that are key decisions. So that at this particular moment, in terms of the Constitution, is decisions that are taken by Cabinet, which are identified as a key decision, and that's in terms of its value or that it affects 2 or more wards. So as a individual, you can call in a scrutiny with the support of, I think it's 5, you're going to test my knowledge of the Constitution now, with 5 supporting members, and that has to be done within a statutory framework. And there are some statutory deadlines around that. So if there is a decision taken by Cabinet, call-in would have to happen very quickly thereafter. And then there's a programme, as you've seen with the garden waste one, where we went through that process. There's a number of gateways through which it goes. And again, that's subject to statutory timelines as well. In terms of acting as a committee, the principles still apply. So if the chairman or yourselves felt that there was a decision that was taken by Cabinet that you wanted to bring forward for call-in, then as a committee you don't need to wait for a committee meeting to do that. You can work behind the scenes and activate that call-in process in exactly the same way. So 1 lead and then 5 supporting. Yeah. So there is a process. It's all set out within the Constitution. There's a whole chapter around the scrutiny calling process for you. But again, if that's something that you feel that you want some additional guidance around the process, more than happy to have a conversation or an informal training session so that you can fully understand that going forward.
Come back on that, Chairman. And I'm really grateful for that feedback. And I didn't necessarily actually ask it for myself because, you know, I kind of know most of the answers. I've been around as many others for some time. But so I think that was helpful. I think for me, yes, please. I think actually your committee members, and I'm not just speaking on behalf of myself, I'm speaking on behalf of some members that weren't able to be here this evening, that I know are really well read and really enjoy getting into detail and just feel that they've lost their way on scrutiny. So, and I think if I was to agree any work programme tonight, it would have to have something in there that reflected that we've agreed within our work programme as soon as to have some training with the centre and or Kim. I think it's absolutely vital. So yeah, I mean, in terms of the programme, I'm quite comfortable. It's not all there for me, but I think the thing that needs to be there is training for this committee. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Appendix 2. This is a public meeting. It's being webcast. And when I look at this, if I wasn't me, if I was Joe Public out there, I'd wonder, what is NEP? We're using acronyms on public documents without explaining what they are. And I've already spoken on the issue of decontextualised information, but this is also obscuring in a different manner. I really think we ought to say what we're talking about on public documents where we use acronyms. It seems quite a simple suggestion or recommendation from me. The other thing is that I don't suppose it eludes anybody's understanding that I am fundamentally somebody who truly believes in democracy. And so I always want to see democratic scrutiny of absolutely every aspect of public life. And so on that basis, I think it would come as no surprise if I ask, if it's not for us to scrutinise an issue such as the election issues that other people have raised, I'm not raising them, what democratic committee within this organisation would scrutinise it?
So it wouldn't be a scrutiny through this particular council, but there are bodies who are looking at the scrutiny process, the elections process, and we'll be doing that scrutiny in a more public forum through those routes. I know the LGA are very proactive in this space. The AEA particularly are campaigning for reviews to take place through the new government. So it is a process that will happen on a national level rather than an individual basis.
Two questions. What does AEA mean? Sorry, Tim. Second question. Sorry. It's just the title of Appendix 2. The topic title, NEP, Joint Committee Partnership Agreement. But then key lines of inquiry include how is money generated from car parks used? What policies does the council have around parking? I mean, should the title be expanded to include parking? Because I assume when you're talking about what is money generated for car parks used for, that is money from the council's car park. Is that what it means? And what policies does the council have around parking? Does that include policies around parking, private parking? It's just not very clear what's meant by 3 and 4.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Yeah, I'll take that back and see if we can obviously make that clearer and just clarify exactly what those points are. The terms of reference that you have in this document have been reviewed by the chairman of the scrutiny chairman, I beg your pardon. So yeah, I can certainly have a look at perhaps rewording some of those and the title and making that a bit clearer about what exactly we're looking at and why that's come forward as a line of inquiry. So yeah, if you let me take that back, I'll see if I can strengthen that for you.
Yeah, so just to clarify, I mean, I think what I'm not clear about on that is, is this topic going beyond NEP? I mean, maybe that it isn't, but that's what I'm not clear about.
Okay, yeah, it's looking at the, so it is, it's looking at all the, I suppose, the partners, all that are involved with the NEP, all the different organisations, and what that might branch into. To be honest, I'm not an expert on NEP. I do apologise. So it is something. These are just the key lines of inquiry that we have identified based on, discussions with the chairman and with senior officers as well. And this is what's come forward. So if some of these, perhaps they're unclear, as I say, I will take those back and try and strengthen those for you, and get a bit more detail around why those have come forward as lines of inquiry and, what's kind of the context behind them. So I'll do that for you.
Yes, I fully accept a lot of responsibility in this because I received so many complaints and I've read so much about NEP. I just assumed that everybody knew it was a North East Essex Parking Partnership, and so that is mine. And the understanding is that it's what the areas that they have control over within our district more than anything else, even though they are far wider spread. Because part that Councillor Peel brought up was the worry about it affecting some disabled areas in Housestead, which they also patrol, and it was to try to collate all the information I had into a smaller document. So yes, I take on board that not everybody has seen all the bits of paper about NEP that we have, and it needs to be made clearer. And when it's presented, it will be.
Thank you, Chairman. On the basis of the conversation that's just been had, and taking into my account the fact that my reading of this document, Appendix 2, suggests there's no clarity in the mind of whoever authored it as to exactly what it is we're supposed to be looking at. And on that basis, I would have to recommend, Chairman, that we do not support recommendation 2.2, I believe it is, which is that we to agree the terms of reference for the scrutiny review into NEPP, Joint Committee Partnership set out in Appendix 2. It's absolutely clear to me that more work needs doing on this before we can agree it. Because we should not, I mean, at the risk of actually scrutinising something, we should not adopt a document on the basis that, oh well, we'll fix it. With the greatest of respect, I'm not trying to be funny about this. If we're going to agree something, then that means that we're all fundamentally publicly acknowledging that we think that thing is right. And yet quite clearly from the conversation, or the discourse this evening, I should say, that's not the case here. So can I ask that it's deferred, pending some sort of remediation? It's to provide the clarity that Councillor Parker is asking for, and to make sure that other people like me actually understand what we're trying to do here, because I'm sure it's worthwhile, but it lacks the clarity to allow me to know that.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. We can certainly look at, as you say, given the key lines of inquiry, in that some further clarity and strengthening them. In terms of whether what we agree tonight, I might just need to check with you, Kim, how we should word that going forward. But I imagine it would be obviously the committee if they don't accept the terms of reference as they currently are, is to take that back and strengthen those and bring them back to the next meeting of this committee, or perhaps we can send it in advance so members can feed into that beforehand. That might be better. And then the finalised terms of reference are brought to the next committee and we agree at that time. But obviously, as the work programme currently stands, we're due to start the first evidence gathering session of this review at the next meeting in September, I believe it is. So we just it'll just be kind of tying that in so that runs smoothly. So we have those agreed, and we can also start the scrutiny review as well, according to sort of process, so we get that underway. We just to avoid delaying the start of that scrutiny review, I suppose. So we've got the terms of reference, and we are also ready to start the scrutiny review. So, yeah, sorry.
In terms of the clarification that you're asking to go into the terms of reference, that's absolutely fine. We can expand on the acronym for NEP, and part of your initial evidence base will go into the fact that it's a joint committee and the establishment of it, and we'll deal with looking at the functions that have been delegated into that joint committee for which they have responsibility for. Which is where your question comes from, Councillor Parker. So you're only the purpose of this particular scrutiny is to look at the functions that committee owns responsibility for, and are they delivering, is the role working, how is the money generated from those responsibilities through the management of the car parks and enforcement generated. So we can add that wording into that as a terms of reference. That's not a problem. More than happy to do that. In terms of process, I agree. We obviously have your next committee booked for September. If the committee don't feel able to agree the terms of reference in its current wording and would like to see it before they do so, may I suggest that we change the recommendation to allow the chairman of this committee, working with you behind the scenes, to agree the revised terms of reference that we can circulate to you as soon as possible. And then that way we can make sure that we hit the 24th, I think it's the 24th of September. 25th, so close, in terms of making sure that we have that meeting with the right terms of reference that you as a committee are happy with, and the right individuals there as well.
Mr. Chairman, I'm personally not willing to accept that. I think it's very important that these documents are clear and coherent. The topic title is NEPP Joint Committee Partnership Agreement. I would expect that I would be scrutinising a document to see whether it was fit for purpose. But from what we've just had described to us, what's expected here runs far beyond that. And so I think we need to know what is being expected of us, and that needs agreeing by all of us. And as this debate is a consequence, with the greatest respect, of your good self looking at this document and allowing it to come forward to this committee, I think it's only reasonable that the whole committee looks at it again and makes that decision.
Thank you, Chairman. I do rather agree with that this is a scrutiny committee, and I think that we want to go around the table and hear what everybody's got to say. So that would be my first point on that item. My second point goes back again to the point I raised earlier on about the works programme, for us also to agree that. I don't think we can agree the works programme that doesn't include some training for us on there. I think it's so important. And again, I wonder whether, I'm not actually so much well, I suppose I am suggesting a deferral, but maybe we just need to get another meeting in the calendar before September, because 25th September is quite a way off, actually. And I think we could probably get another meeting in and just come back with this clarity and this reshaping. And maybe we could use that meeting actually for our training event as well. If we're just looking at those two items and some training, I wonder whether we just put another meeting of the committee in, because I'm just mindful of who actually isn't here this evening. Quite a few members, actually. And it is quite an important, and I wasn't able to make, I think it was last meeting where similar sort of discussions, I did watch the webcast, were happening, and here we are again still talking about it. So I just wonder whether we actually just decide to defer those two items, the work programme and the terms of reference, with some training for the next meeting to be held before the 25th of September. Thank you, Chairman.
So happy to have a look at the potential to have an additional meeting. The difficulty we have is obviously you've got August, which is holiday season, so it will be a resource implication. Obviously, we do set all our meetings on a 4-year calendar, so we do try to stick to them as much as possible. And again, looking at training, we will have a look at it and see what we can bring forward for you. I can't make any promises around that. It may be that we end up coming back on the September date with the revised terms of reference, and that's absolutely fine. And we can build the programme accordingly. It's not a problem. But I will take away and look at the calendar to see what's feasible.
Sorry to be difficult on this. I mean, the work programme that we've been asked to agree is basically the budget and the NEP and the performance reports, but and then there are some other topics which may or may not be included. I mean, I'm not sure what we're actually agreeing, other than scrutinising the budget and NEP, because there are 4 topics that have been, is it 4 or 6 topics that have been listed as topics that we might be considering. But I suppose, as you said, it's a live document, so they can just be, and are they all going to be added in, or some of them are going to be added in, or what are we actually agreeing to?
So apologies not to make it clear on the document, Councillor Parker. So yes, those topics that are listed underneath the work programme, they are to be included as part of the work programme. That work programme is a light touch because we haven't got timelines for when those topics will actually come forward. So what I've included in there is the topics that we know, we have a more definite time frame for. So that's why I've included it in there. It is a kind of a starting point. When I say it's a live document, obviously once we have an idea of when those topics are going to come forward to the committee for review, we will be updating the work programme, I beg your pardon. We'll update the work programme to include those topics and give definitive time frames and timelines for those. But because I don't have that information at the moment, I haven't included those. I've just included them as a list at the end. So I can make that clearer to show that they will be coming forward. And if that's not clear, that's absolutely fine. I'll take that comment on board.
Can I also just say that, in addition to what's on the work plan already, there are 4 other topics been identified in tranche 1. There are presumably some topics in tranche 2. I don't know how many meetings we've got. This is I mean, that seems to be an awful lot to try and get through in what is for nearly 9 months.
Well, as I say, we will be looking at how those are going to develop. We do have a few options. Obviously, we have this committee meeting, but we also have other functions within the scrutiny arrangements of the council, which include task and finish groups and so on. So there are other ways that we can look at those. If it means we might need to review the timetable and perhaps add in additional meetings or sort of initiate task and finish groups, that is something we can look at. But there isn't actually a time frame, a deadline that these reviews have to be completed. So it's something that we will look at and try to incorporate in an appropriate sort of fashion when it would be best time to bring those topics forward. But until we sort of come to that point to look at those topics, we're not going to have that kind of, you know, we need to be able to scope them first and see what we need to look at, and from that determine an appropriate kind of time frame for them to be reviewed. Okay, I hope that.
Thank you, Chairman. Based on what I've heard, it looks to me as though in tranche one there's enough work there to keep us going for the next year. And so the topics that members are bringing forward would therefore most likely fall into the following year. And one of Councillor Beavis has already raised the issue. We arrived here this evening wondering whether we were going to be quorate. We should be seeking to engage every member of this committee in this work as best we can. And I would respectfully suggest that that means we ought to be looking at some of the things they care about, as well as the things that are being suggested in the first tranche. And my worry with the way this is organised is that any subject that members wish to raise, but which are contentious or difficult, will just be kicked down the road, and we'll hit the next election before we've found enough time to even think about it. It's a real worry to me that what has happened with this process since our last meeting and the call for topics which went out is in actual fact a process which will lead to those topics probably not getting discussed, because one of the things we can absolutely guarantee in these changing times is there will be more topics coming along as we go, and you've said this is a rolling programme. It's a struggle for me to support the detail that's on this. We don't actually need it there. This might trap us. This might trap us in tranche one work for the next 18 months. And none of the things that we as members have brought forward would be discussed. And that's a genuine worry on my part. I hoped we would be moving forward to a position where it wasn't just the management committee that's determining this, that in actual fact we were taking scrutiny where we as elected members needed to go in the interests of the people we represent. But that's not how it feels. And if it doesn't feel like that, it's not going to surprise me if one day I turn up here, and I will turn up, and find we're not quorate, and I can trundle another 12 miles back to my home, having wasted my evening. Thank you.
The only thing I will say about tonight's meeting is that this is a rearranged one already, and I had to rearrange my diary to be able to attend this, and I'm fortunate that I literally do dictate my own diary, which others may not be able to do. So there was always a danger that scheduling a meeting at relative short notice causes people problems, and I accept that because as I say, I originally wasn't even going to be in the country this week, but I'm here because I'm the chairman of the committee, and I made arrangements, but I don't believe that that's always possible for other people, and I've got commitments later in the year where I wouldn't be able to get here if it was moved. So I think tonight is unique. I mean, we've always had people had to give their apologies for this committee meeting, the same as they have for any other, but we've never been this short on the ground before.
Chairman, I believe Councillor Toby Williams is Vice Chairman of this committee. So if you're not available, can I just clarify that Toby...
I'm just saying why we are so short of people tonight. I think it is purely because the meeting has had to be rescheduled rather than people not wanting to be here.
Mm.
Sort of really in summary of the conversation before we move on to sort of moving of the recommendations, which I'm not entirely sure we're actually going to get to yet, because I just don't feel that two of the items, particularly the work programme and the NEP, that we've got sufficient information, and also there's no mention of the training and the sort of the programme of works. And we've also mentioned this evening about, you know, possible task and finish groups, yet there's nothing mentioned about that. And for me, it's just that clarity, really, that real clarity on where we go for the rest of the year. And my final question is, if, say, for example, I wanted to suggest that we scrutinise the local highways panel, you know, it's a committee that we hold here, we do some administration from here, there's a lot going on, I read the minutes. Would we be able to do that as a committee? And could we add that to the programme? You know, it's kind of all, it's that. And I just don't think that we've done enough of this before we move on to agreeing what we're going to do. I think in some respects this is probably a meeting too soon to agree this stuff.
Thank you. Right. You should see I've just been thinking about what I'm going to do is actually ask if there is a mover for item 7 and a seconder first. Is there a mover that we proceed on item 7, which I'm fairly certain it wasn't. So can I then suggest that the feeling is that we move to defer item 7, subject to the discussions we've had today, and to respond back to the committee at the earliest possible moment. Is that a fair summary?
Are you moving that, Chairman?
Yeah.
I will second that.
Yeah. Okay.
Chairman,
Yes.
Yeah, but can I just, may I make a suggestion in relation to the work programme? I mean, items to be scheduled. Maybe we could just add additional lines on there, or additional boxes. I mean, at the moment we've got only 2 items to be scheduled, or there were 4 referred to in the report. And maybe even if we had an additional box, any other topics suggested by the committee or something like that, just to make it clear that this document doesn't list everything. Yeah. Okay, that's just a suggestion, Chairman.
All those in favour of deferral, please. Right, thank you. Right, so yeah. Item number 8, which is the decision planner. Put the teeth back in. Members, for this item we've been asked to review the decision planner for the period the 1st of August 24 to the 31st of October 24. Do members have any issues that they would like to raise in respect of the decision planner? Councillor Beavers?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. If I may, in terms of the decision planner, it's probably one of the documents that we get on a regular basis from the council that I really enjoy reading. I think it's completely factual and sets out the key priorities and the direction of travel for the council, and it's been the same type of document for a very long time, and yeah, I'm more than happy with it. I don't have an issue with the way that we deliver or communicate it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? To accept the decision planner?
Just for noting.
Oh, just for noting. Right, sorry. Right. So, thank you, so it's noted. Right, so thank you, members. The planner has been noted, and that brings us to the close of business. Members, if we have no urgent business, this item concludes our business for the evening. Our next scheduled meeting of the committee is due to take place on the 20th of September 24. I will therefore close this meeting of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee at 9:10, and thank you all for your attendance and have a good rest of your evening. Thank you very much, everybody.